All right, people, so welcome back to Breaking Dawn. We are 7 minutes past the hour, 7 o'clock, and for the next 15 minutes, we're going to be joined by Mr. Haran Ramkaransingh, who is the Director of Legal at the Equal Opportunities Commission. We're going to find out a little bit about the commission, what they do, and how, most importantly, you can reach out to them with any complaints that you may have. So, Mr. Ramkaransingh, your name long boy, long last name. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Stefan.
All right, nice man. So, first off, I guess we could start by explaining to people what the Equal Opportunities Commission is about. Like, what do you all do there?
Okay. Well, the Equal Opportunity Commission is a public body. We are created by an act of parliament, the Equal Opportunity Act. So we are, for the most part, governed by this legislation in terms of what we can and what we cannot do.
Okay.
Now, the commission was created, the act was passed to prohibit certain kinds of discrimination. That's to say discrimination in four broad categories, in employment, in education, in the provision of goods and services, and the provision of accommodation, where this discrimination is tied to personal and inherent characteristics known as status grounds. So the act protects 7 status grounds. That is one's race, one's ethnicity, one's religion, your marital status, your sex, and any disability, and your origin. So just to give an example, if you were discriminated in employment, say based on your race, or based on your sex, or based on your origin, then you can lodge a complaint with the commission. Our mandate, we are empowered to receive these complaints. We can investigate the complaints. Where possible, we try to bring the parties together to a table to have a discussion, reconciliate the complaints. If it cannot be resolved, the Act created a second institution, which is the Equal Opportunity Tribunal, and they are a court. They are chaired by a judge appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. So all judges and magistrates in Trinidad and Tobago are appointed by the Service Commission. That's a constitutional body. Okay. So that this is chaired by a judge, and you can carry your matter there. Now, if you lodge a complaint with the commission, it's free of charge. You don't need an attorney.
Well, that was about to ask, because it seems like, well, you're here representing persons who may be victimized. Because listen, especially during the pandemic, with the whole vaccine mandate and so on and so forth that was put out at the time, I got a lot of messages, a lot of requests from people who were saying, Stefan, I can't go back to work, I can't do this, discriminated against me because this and the other. And I told them, I said, go get a lawyer. Because the Equal Opportunities Commission did not even, it didn't register in my head that, the commission exists. So there is a commission that exists, so that if you cannot afford to go to a lawyer, you could go through the Equal Opportunities, and your legal department would take up the matter for those persons?
Well, we assist the persons. Remember, we are a public body, so our mandate is really to be neutral. So it's not correct, really, that we would fight for the person.
Okay.
But at the same time, when a person comes to lodge a complaint with us, our mandate would be to see how that complaint can be resolved.
All right.
So it could be resolved in their favor, or it could be resolved sometimes in the employer's favor, but that's just how it is.
That's just how it is. So you all are dealing in it from trying to resolve the matter.
Yes.
Right, between two parties or three parties, or many people involved. All right, what other services do you guys provide at the Equal Opportunities Commission?
Well, I like to say that our complaint services is probably a bit reactive in that somebody has to lodge a complaint. Sometimes people would ask us, well, did we see so-and-so happening in the newspaper? What are we doing about it? But really and truly, if you are the victim of discrimination, you have to lodge a complaint. We're not just going to open a newspaper and see something and think, let us take action on that.
Right.
But we have other services that we offer. For example, part of our mandate is to do research and education. We have published guidelines on our website, guidelines for employees. And these guidelines, you can download it on our website free of charge. It's www.equalopportunity.gov.tt. People say equal opportunities, but it's really a singular, equal opportunity.
Okay.
.tt. We have guidelines for employers. We have guidelines on disability. And we have guidelines on sexual harassment in the workplace.
Okay, great. Sexual harassment in the workplace. There's a serious one that is not usually reported because we're so passive in Trinidad and Tobago with sexual harassment as opposed to other parts of the world. We take it as laugh and a giggle and that kind of thing, but sometimes a lot of sexual harassment, or what is defined as sexual harassment, is taking place in the workplace, and we just know, it's like a Caribbean thing, but it should be taken seriously. Now, in terms of, you said that you all have to be contacted. So, in that context, there is a number on the screen. The contact number is 627-0928, extension 231.
Actually,
we have that number.
It's 672 because we're based in Sugar.
Oh, 672, fellas.
Yes, because we are
Wait,
based in
Sugar.
So it'll be a Sugar number, 672, as opposed to 627.
You see, I send 672, eh?
Yes, okay.
Correct that for me now, 672. Yeah. All right, so it is 672-0928,
Yes.
Extension 231. All right, the director will have that corrected there briefly.
Yes.
But for those of you who you do not know or you did not know that there is a commission to deal with your complaints if you feel that you are being victimized based on several reasons that you mentioned a little while ago. It could be disability, it could be ethnicity, it could be anything, right? Any number of things. This is the commission that you call, and that will be the number that you contact them by.
Yes.
All right? Olive, correct that for me, please. Okay, so now, in terms of complaints and investigating complaints, all right, so how does the process work? And how does the investigation?
Well, as I said, you have to lodge a complaint. Just to reiterate, we wouldn't just see something in the newspaper or on the radio and say we are going to investigate that. It has to be that a person affected has to have lodged a complaint. Once you lodge a complaint, we will contact you at some point, to perhaps get further information from you. Now, based on that information, we may then decide to write to the respondent. The respondent is the person or the entity against whom you've lodged a complaint. So, so let's say you're complaining about something that happened in your job, then we would write to the employer or your employer and let them know about this complaint that's been lodged. One of the questions that sometimes we were asked is, if we're writing to the employer, can you not let the employer know that I have lodged this complaint against them?
Right.
Regrettably, we can't do that because, as I said, we are an independent and neutral body, so we have to give the employer due process. So due process means that if someone has made an allegation against you, the employer should be told that this person has made these allegations, this is what they've said, and can you give a response?
Okay, just a minute.
Sure.
Fellas, the number on the screen wrong, eh? I don't think Ole heard me the first time. It's 672. That is what I sent. Well, let me make that correction. Yeah. Right, so continue.
Yes. So that we would write to the employer and we would say, well, these are the allegations that have been made against you, and we would ask them for a response. We can ask them to provide documents, information, and we have the power to ask quite a number of questions.
Okay.
Yes. And
all
then,
right. So you all have some teeth?
Yes, yes.
All right, good. In terms of, let's see, characteristics, there are 7 characteristics and status grounds?
Yes, yes.
Okay, why are you all limited to that?
Well, that's really basically what the Act provides. So that I remember, we are a statutory body. We're created by legislation. And when the Act was passed, these were the grounds that it was limited to. Part of our mandate is to make recommendations for amendments. So, for example, we have recommended that age be added as a status ground. We've also recommended that sexual orientation be added as a status ground, because although the Act protects against sex, discrimination on the grounds of sex, discrimination on the grounds of sex simply means, are you being discriminated against because you're a man or a woman? For example, a matter we regularly get is women saying that they're being paid less than a man for doing the same job. But it also works both ways, because, for example, in the United Kingdom, there are different models of equal opportunity legislation all over the world, and in the UK they have their own. And there was a case that went to them where if a man has to work until age 65 to get full benefits of retirement, but a woman can retire at 60, then that's also sex discrimination, because the man is being treated less favorably. So we always like to say, don't think sex discrimination is only where women are concerned.
There are issues where men
there are issues where men are concerned. But sex discrimination, as I said, really means, why are you being discriminated against because you're a man or a woman? And it does not include discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation.
Okay.
So we have recommended, for example, that be added as a ground of protection.
Okay. In terms of lodging a complaint with the Commission, now, when you lodge that complaint, because obviously your calling number 6720928, extension 231.
Yes, and it's been corrected, yes.
Yeah, your calling number, and okay, once you lodge that complaint, do you stay on the job?
Well, yeah.
Do you? Yes. Okay. Unless you are suspended or sent on some sort of leave, you still attend work, but you have this issue that has been filed Okay.
Well, actually,
so explain us how the complaint goes.
Well,
in
if
terms of
your
lodging it.
employer takes some punitive action against you, let's just say you've lodged a complaint, and because of that, your employer does something adverse to you. Let's just say you had a nice window office, and then as soon as you lodge a complaint with the commission, they move you to some back room with no windows and no doors and no working computer. Or, for example, you were supposed to have been sent on some kind of training or some kind of program, and they say, no, we're not sending you anymore. Then you can actually lodge a second complaint with us of victimization. In other words, if the employer takes some punitive sanction against you because of you lodging your complaint. Sorry, if they suspend you, if they fire you, if they do even something as simple as relocating your office and taking away your computer and all of these things, that could be a second complaint that you can lodge with us of victimization. Victimization really is where you were treated adversely because of some action you took to lodge a complaint, or even if you threaten your employer that you're going to lodge a complaint and they do these things to you, that could be a second matter altogether.
Okay.
But going back to the first complaint. So you have lodged a complaint, we would contact you, we would, based on that, we would then write to the employer and get information from them. When we get this information, we would call you into a meeting and say we'd like to discuss with you what your employer has said. We don't give copies of the employer's response to you, because really and truly that's correspondence between the commission and the employer. So it's not something that you have an entitlement to say, give me this, I will take it home and read it. So that's why we will call you into a meeting if you want to bring an attorney. As I said, you don't need an attorney, but if you want to bring an attorney, that's your choice. Or trade union rep, an industrial relations advisor, you can bring that. Based on that, you may perhaps give us some more information. You may say what they said here in line 1 is correct, line 2 is incorrect, this is really what happened. So we could write back to the employer again a second time around to say, well, having considered your information, we have further questions for you.
Okay.
Or another option, so that's one option, you ask more questions. Another option could just simply be that after a discussion, you have a better clarity or better understanding of what really happened. Because sometimes what exists is what is called information asymmetry, that is asymmetrical. In other words, the employer might have more information than you. Let's just say one regular complaint we get is I applied for a job somewhere. Maybe I was not even called for an interview, and I saw so-and-so got the job. Or maybe I was called for an interview, but then I wasn't hired. So we would write to the employer, and sometimes we might get the resume of this happened in a matter recently. We got the resume of the person who was actually hired, and when the person who lodged the complaint saw the resume and looked at it, they said, well, I appreciate this person is probably more qualified and more experienced than I was. So in other words, while they might have felt discriminated against in the initial stages, perhaps only when they saw all of this information, they realized, okay, this person was probably better suited for the job than me. So then that person may say, okay, I wish to withdraw my complaint. I don't wish to pursue it any further because I now have a better understanding of what has happened. Or they may say, or we might write them and say, well, having looked at this and having looked at the matter, we're not really seeing a case of discrimination, because discrimination really speaks to unequal treatment in circumstances where, in similar circumstances. So let's just say somebody has I don't know, a master's degree and 10 years of experience in a job, and you just have a certificate. You really can't say that I'm being treated unequally if that person is more qualified or more experienced than you. So then we can write to you and say, well, we have not seen any evidence of discrimination, and we can terminate your matter there. Alternative, so that's the second option. The third option would be, as I said, we bring the parties to the table to have a discussion, which is conciliation. Persons used to ask us in the past, well, how much money have we awarded or how much money have we given to persons? I know we don't adjudicate on matters. Only a judge, a court can say, I order you to pay X amount of dollars.
Right.
But when we bring parties to the table, it's really for you all to facilitate a conversation between the parties to see sometimes a party might just want an apology or an acknowledgement that, so parties have asked us, persons have lodged complaints in the past said, well, what I want is I want my employer to put in place policies and programs to not let this happen again.
Okay.
So, or it could be tangible, so as something tangible like some sort of financial compensation, if you all could agree to that. And then the fourth one would be referring the matter. You remember I spoke about the tribunal. So that's the fourth option. So we could refer the matter to the Equal Opportunity Tribunal, which is a court. Now, if it goes there, because you're before a court, that's a different thing. They're separate to us. They're independent from us, so we have no control over what the court does or how they decide their matters.
Right.
And when you go there, you would have to actually retain an attorney. So that's when you need to bring in your lawyers, and It's before court, so it have all of the little processes and rules of practice and procedures as with a court matter. You have to file your witness statements, your evidence, your arguments, all of the paperwork that goes into a court matter.
Okay. Do you all get involved? Well, this is for public servants and private, right?
Yes, yes, for both public and private. Any form of employment.
It's interesting that you're on this morning, in just the few moments that we have here. I see that former Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez says he's deeply considered the way the government is dismantling key pillars of WASA, the transformation, in what he describes as a narrow partisan and corrupt interests.
Yes, yes.
And we have all these changeovers taking place, all these boards.
Yes.
Right. And we know that those are political appointments and so on and so forth. But have you all ever had complaints where things like that is regarded?
Well, yes, we have actually had matters in the past. Now, the essence of discrimination, as I said, is unequal treatment. So, for example, we did have a matter in the past where someone said that they were terminated from their appointment on the grounds of what they call a redundancy. That is to say, there was a restructuring exercise, and it was felt that their position was no longer necessary in the organization. But what they were able to show is that after they left, or around the same time they were being shown the door for redundancy, another person was promoted into a similar position. So that's how really you would show discrimination. Because as I said, let's just say the organization is going through a downsizing and they terminate half their staff or three-quarters of their staff. It may not be possible to really point to discrimination there because other people are being terminated or restructured or downsized, right-sized, left-side, or all the kind of sizing as they call it. But, but if they're sending you home saying that, well, or there was one matter that we had dealt with, it had gained national attention many years ago, where a company said that they were doing a restructuring and only one person got terminated as a result of this restructuring.
Okay.
Yes. So again, that's a very suspicious activity. How can you say you're doing a downsizing, but in the entirety of the company with how many thousands of employees, only one person gets restructured. Or right-sized. So these are so then in a situation like that, when the person lodged the complaint, we asked we would do what you call interrogate the process. So in other words, we asked the employer, well, could you tell us more about this so-called restructuring exercise? Tell us who conducted it, what documents, what reports, these sort of things.
Okay.
And they weren't able to point to anything. It seemed that they just sat down in a room and decided this was their restructuring, and they will send this one person home.
All right, finally, before we wrap up, you all have some upcoming events taking place in terms of educating the public?
Well, yes, we're always involved in public education activities.
Right.
For example, on Saturday, we are involved in a legal aid clinic hosted by the Eastern Lawyers Association, and that is at what is called the El Dorado Consumer Cooperative Complex on the Eastern Main Road in Cora in Tacarigua. And that's a legal aid clinic that they host 3 times a year, for example.
Okay.
And they have not just the Equal Opportunity Commission, but they have lawyers there who interact with members of the public, but they also have statutory organizations like the Ombudsman, the Equal Opportunity Commission, the Police Complaints Authority. So any member of the public who wants to access services from these organizations can go there on Saturday. On Saturday? Yes. At the Eastern Main Road in El Dorado.
All right, nice, man. Well, I want to thank you for coming in this morning and giving us all this information. And people, listen, the information is out there. All you have to do is reach out and access it. And one of the ways that you can do that is you can call the number on the screen, which is 672-0928, extension 231. You can call the Equal Opportunity Commission, and you could go out to the legal aid event that they have going on this weekend in El Dorado.
Yes, in El Dorado.
And, you can get more information. You can go to the site as well.
Yes.
What's the site again?
It's www.equalopportunity.gov.tt.
All right, nice one. So we want to thank Mr. Ramkaransingh for coming in this morning and spending some time with us and giving us some information. Fellas, if you have any complaints that we want to file, let me know now,
Okay, thank you for having me. Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll tell you what, people, stay tuned when we come back. Dr. Watson is coming up shortly, and she has a case study, very interesting case study to bring to us. But stay tuned. More breaking down for you after this.
Adventure lives here.